Sherry Tunney with the Marine Canvas Training Institute. Today we'll demonstrate the making of a full cover. We'll show you how to lay out the patterns to avoid waste and how to cut and sew them together quickly. Our goal, as always, is to demonstrate how to increase your profits through the efficient use of materials and labor, while at the same time turning out quality marine products. Joining me today is Don Wedge, President of the Marine Canvas Training Institute. Hi, Don.
Hi, Sherry.
Although your students may master the skills that have made you renowned in the industry, how important is it that they have a good material to utilize?
Well, Sherry, using the skills we teach them, the materials that they use can make the difference of whether they're turning out a quality product that we can accept and that our customers have come to expect.
So where do you go to get this high quality material?
What we use is Sunbrella, which is manufactured by Glenraven Mills, in Gore-Tex thread.
Okay, tell us a little bit about Sunbrella.
Sunbrella is manufactured by Glenraven Mills. One of the reasons that we use it is that Sunbrella has got a 5-year guarantee on the material. And it also has a complete color line, which is acceptable to our customers to match the colors on their boats.
And Gore-Tex sewing thread?
Gore-Tex sewing thread we use for the simple reason it's the only thread that I know of that when you sew a marine product up with it is guaranteed for the life of that product, 100%.
Now, how do you get these materials to your shop?
Those two materials, along with some others we buy from Unitex, which is one of our national suppliers. One of the reasons we use Unitex is because they're dedicated to fast service and competitive pricing.
So it's safe to say by utilizing a service such as Unitex and having high quality materials such as Sunbrella and the Gore-Tex sewing thread that your end product is really a top quality product, one that can withstand the harsh elements often encountered.
Sherry, you got that exactly right. Now let's get back to the shop and go to work.
All right.
Good morning. This morning we're going to show you how to sew up a cover. Now, due to the constraints of what we can show on a television camera, we're going to do it in miniature. In the previous tape you saw the blank that we sewed up to pattern on the boat. So we've taken 3 pieces here and we're going to do this in miniature, and as we do it I'll explain what's being done. The first thing that she's going to do is take 2 pieces which are long strips that were already cut from the measurements from the boat, and there's basically two kinds of seams used to sew your blank together. One is what you call sew the 2 pieces together face to face and top sew it, which is a top sewed seam. And that's what she's going to do right now. Now the reason that we're doing it this way on a top sewed seam is that some shops have a double needle machine, some shops don't. So if all you have is a single needle machine, you can still make covers because this is a way to put your strips together for the blank. It takes just a little bit longer to put the blanks together this way, but sometimes if you're not making a lot of covers, it's cheaper than having a double needle machine sitting around. What we do try to do when we sew these sewed and top sewed seams is top sew them in such a way that the roll or the shingle effect that we get from top sewing is facing towards the back of the boat, so that as the cover is higher on the front, the water runs off over the shingle effect just like it does on your house. So if you can see it on the camera this way, the part of the cover that's in her right hand would be towards the aft end of the boat. Now the next seam that she's going to show you is what's called a lap seam, which would be done with a double needle machine. We're going to fake it out and do it with a single needle just so that you have the 2 examples of how it's done. If you want to use seam tape to seal it up, it's a good idea because here you only have 2 thicknesses of material. And with acrylics, they have a tendency to leak once in a while when you only got 2 thicknesses. With 3 thicknesses, you don't have to worry about it. Plus, by using the 1/2-inch seam tape, it gives you a guide for a 1/2-inch seam allowance. Or usually on a double needle machine, you'll probably have a guide that'll force you into doing it 1/2 inch wide, or whatever the gauge of your machine happens to be. Now, we're not going to cheat you out of anything here. We just have to do this in miniature. But while she's getting this ready to sew, I'm going to go through the list of things that have to be sewed up on a cover, because when we get these miniatures done to show you, then we're going to cut away and show you what the full cover looks like on the boat. And I'll do a brief explanation of all the things on the cover that were done on this miniature. Plus, we don't want to bore you watching us sew up a whole cover. Got to get you taught so you can go out and make money. So what she's going to do is sew down the edge of the material that's showing to her here, and then come back and sew another seam 1/2 inch away from that one. What she's done here is turned the blank over so that she can use the other edge of the other piece as a guide, so that she makes sure that she gets a 1/2 inch spread, because when you're doing a lap seam with a single needle machine, you want your two seams to look parallel. You don't want them to be a little bit goofy. Okay, now in effect what we have is the blank already sewed up. We've put it on the boat as we did in the previous section of the tape. We've patterned it out, brought it back to the table, and the next step is to sew in all the reinforcing patches, which would have been marked on the boat. We've marked one out here just to show you the easy way to do it, because what we usually do is take a piece of vinyl, put the seam tape on it, and the piece of vinyl will be larger than the area that we have to reinforce. Put the seam tape on it and stick it down. That way you get it sewed down real easy, because you're trying to turn a full cover through the machine and sew all the way around this piece of vinyl. Now this is real easy here because we're on a little piece, but when you get on a bigger cover, it's a little more difficult. So we found that it's a lot easier to put seam tape on the vinyl and stick it down over the area that we have to reinforce. And just a reminder, now you have to reinforce acrylics, as you do all good covers, on all of the chafe spots. There's a lot of different kinds of boat covers on the market. Some are called trailing covers, some are called mooring covers, some are called storage covers. We only make one kind of cover. It's the best kind that we can make. That way you can let the customer do anything he wants. He can store it, he can moor it, or he can trail it down the road. Because if you start trying to cut and make them a less expensive cover without the reinforcements, you can be guaranteed you're going to see them dragging it down the road, just tearing it to pieces. All right, now that you've got all the reinforcing pieces on the underside of the cover, you're going to turn it over, and I'm going to ask Becky to put a dart right through half of that reinforcing piece, because when you're doing your windshield reinforcements, many times, most of the time, your dart will be what?
Straight edge.
Your dart will be finishing right up at the top corner of the windshield, right in the middle of the reinforcement. And for gracious sakes alive, make sure that you do your reinforcing before you put your darts in, because some people try to do it the other way around. And if you've ever tried to put a piece of flat reinforcing into a dart, you haven't lived. So this is the equivalent of a dart on the side of the boat for the windshield, or some other thing that's causing a wrinkle in the material, and it's going to go right up through that reinforcing.
Explain. what I've done here is I've drawn the lines. If this was the outside of the cover, you would have seen us put the top point of the dart, and we would have had this overlapped when we had this on the boat like this. What I've done is cut the dart with 1/2-inch seam allowances, because sometimes you'll have darts that are this wide and sometimes you'll have darts that are this wide. If they're very wide, we don't leave the material in between because it causes a lot of unnecessary bulk. So what I've done is draw my lines that the dart is going to be when it's finished, cut out the excess, being a 1/2-inch seam allowance between this line and where I'm going to lay the two pieces together. If you take your marker and go to the underside, you can feel by going like this, and I'm just going to move the marker around so that it's hard to see right here, but I've drawn the point, which is the dart that I want to finish at. If you turn this over and put your edges together that you cut, and you know you cut them a 1/2 inch away from the finish draw, then you're going to take your 1/2-inch seam allowance and you're going to finish up here at this point.
So what she's going to do here is sew this dart together face to face, then she's going to turn it over and top sew it. That way it's double sewed so you don't have to worry about it coming out. And remember again, we normally try to fold our darts when we top sew them in such a way that the top sew shingles towards the back of the boat.
This is what the dart looks like sewn from the underneath.
Once she gets the darts all sewed down on the cover, the next step is to sew the border on. So the next step we're going to show you is how we make a 9-inch piece finish out to a 6-inch finish border. Now the reason we do our borders this way, we put a drawstring in them. The border is cut 9 inches wide. It's going to finish 6 because we're going to use 2.5 for the hem with a turn under for the drawstring. If I can get done being clumsy here. And she's also going to show you how we how we finish the drawstring so that when we put it on the cover, what is the end of the drawstring and border will be the start of sewing it onto the cover.
What I've done here is folded under this edge 1/2 inch, and I'm going to fold the rest of it up so that you've got approximately 2 inches here. So this winds up with a 6.5 inch finish piece of a drawstring. When it gets sewn to the cover, you'll take a 1/2 inch seam allowance along this edge and wind up with a 6-inch finish draw. And when you're sewing your string in, make sure you don't lose the end of it back in. It's too hard to fish out.
Now while she's making this, let me explain about our borders for our covers. When I was up north, we didn't put a drawstring in because everybody wanted their covers snapped to their boat, and so we always snapped it down 6 inches below the rub rail. When they come down here in a saltwater environment, people don't want you drilling holes in the side of their boat and putting snaps in it, and they all want drawstrings. So we put a drawstring in the cover, and then we have a special triangle that we sew in along with it so that the customer can tie it down to the boat. And it looks so nice and sharp that we do it even when we're going to snap the cover to the boat.
I need more because I've lost my end. Like I said, don't do.
Okay, now when she comes up on the end of this border that she's making, she's going to finish it so that it has a finished look into it, because this is the end that we'll start with to sew it onto the cover. So if you finish it now, you don't have to go back and rip anything out to finish it. And it makes a nice, neat finish on the end. It makes a little V shape in the end of the border so that you got a place to pull your ropes together to tie them. We usually cut the rope off about 3 foot longer than what we need sticking out of the end of this border that we're making.
What I'm doing is taking the fabric like this, folding it up, so you got the point down here, bringing these edges together, tucking this under along with your 1/2 inch, and this winds up with this type of a finish.
Now the end of the border is finished so that she's ready to start sewing it on. We don't have to fool with it again.
Other than I've lost my
That's
stripe.
all right, you'll find it when we sew it on, Vic. All right, now the next step that would be in sewing the cover would be to sew the border on and top sew it. Now we're just going to do a short section to show you how it's done, because again, we have the cover all done.
Triangle.
Well, why don't you start sewing and I'll explain the triangle. She's going to start sewing that on. Now here's what we do. All of the scrap that was cut off the side of that cover when we patterned it, we cut it as many 12-inch squares as we could cut out of that scrap. Then we took those 12-inch squares and we folded them point to point like so, and then folded this point to point like so. It's kind of like folding a napkin, only I can't do a napkin, I can do this. This makes the triangle that we now take and open up and put a grommet on one side or the other of the fold. And I cheated a little bit and pre-done one so that you could see it with the grommet in it on the other side of the fold. Now the reason we do this is we're going to take and fold this in half, and we're going to sew one of these on the cover between the border and the body of the cover. We always try to have one between the bow and the windshield. We always have one at the windshield, and then we spread them out on every seam from the windshield to the stern of the boat so that the customer's got something that ties the cover down to the trailer or underneath the boat, or some way to hold that cover solid on the boat. I'm going to go through this triangle one more time just so that you get it. We took and cut 12-inch squares out of the waist that we cut off the side of the cover on the boat. Lay it down on a table and fold it in half, point to point, crease it, turn it, and fold it point to point again, crease it. There's what it looks like. After it's made like this, then we open it up, take it over to the grommet machine, and put a grommet on one side or the other of the fold, so that when we get it all made up, we can fold it back together like this. There's what it'll look like. We'll have the grommet showing on one side and not on the other. Now the reason for this is bass fishermen love this, because when you rig a cover on a boat, we always use line to rig it to the trailer. Bass fishermen don't like to do that. They like to use a shock strap with hooks on it. So by doing it this way and putting the grommet facing out and this part facing in, this part protects the boat from the S-hook that they're using, and this grommet makes it quick and dirty for them to do it. And it makes a sharp looking cover, and it makes a very positive way to tie the cover down to the boat, or the trailer, I'm sorry. Some people use a 1-inch piece of webbing sewed in the hem. This spreads the strain out over a 12-inch area, so that we have never ever had one of these triangles pull out as we have where the people have sewed a strap in and we had to repair it. So now Becky's going to show you how this gets sewed in as she comes down the side of the cover.
Okay, we've got the drawstring on. If you're continuing down the cover before you get to where you want to put it in, and you usually put your triangles at all junctions of sew and top sew seams or lap seams, and always one at the windshield, because this is where you're going to do a lot of your pulling from. So we just take the triangle upside down so that the grommet is away from you, lay it on the fabric. If you want to put the point here on the seam, you can. Align your edges up here, bring your drawstring over it, so that all your edges are even along here, and sew across it. And you just continue around the cover till you come to another seam. I'm not going to do it at this seam, but that's what you would do if you're going down the edge of the cover.
Now when you get to almost to the other end of putting the border on, stop quick enough that you can cut your border off and make a finish end on it. And she's going to show you how to do that next.
The only thing is when you're going to cut this, don't cut all the way through because you've got a line buried in there. And you've cut the line and you might as well start over.
Or learn how to fish.
Or learn how to fish.
The reason we do it this way is when we figure the amount of border that it takes to go around the cover, rather than to spend the time it takes to figure it right down to the last inch, we always end up trying to have our border finish about, or raw, be about 18 inches longer than what we need to get around the cover. That way it gives us a chance to finish these two ends. That's why if you remember back when I measured for the border that went around the boat, I measured from the bow to the stern and I said, we'll add a couple of feet so that we have plenty of border to get around that because it doesn't cost that much.
Okay, what I'm doing here is finishing the end of the drawstring just like you saw me start it before. By taking this, folding it over, you got your triangle point here again, laying your edges even, and tucking this up to finish what we were coming along there with. Get all the material tucked up in there, bring your string back into here. Finish sewing it down.
Then when you finish sewing it down, you're right at the start in reality, so you just keep going right around the cover top sewing. Now she has to stop and go back and start again, but if you started at this point and finished at this point, you would just flip it over and keep right on sewing, top sewing the cover to the border.
After you stop your drawstring, make sure that you go back and re-sew this part that you just ripped out in order to make it. Now if you put your fingers here, you can feel right along here this folded edge here. If you can't, then you can always take it out of the machine and turn it over. And then you have this end looking like the other end looks when we started. If you notice, I continued right along the same fold to the end. After the drawstring is on all the way around, you turn your cover right side out. And we're going to top sew the seam we just made. Now you want to turn your top sew going that way into the cover so that when the cover is on the boat and if it's raining or it gets wet, the water is shingling off onto the drawstring, onto the ground. If you do it the other way, which is like this is what it looks like the other way. What you're going to do is have the water hitting something and staying there. If it's folded the other way, which is off of you, the water runs off.
And that, folks, is basically all the sewing that it takes to do a cover. Now I'm going to ask Becky to bring it back and just kind of point out how neat this triangle looks in relation to the border and the fact that when the border is tied down underneath the rub rail on the boat, this triangle will be flared out just a little bit so that you got a chance to put the S hook in there or a line in there or whatever you need to do to tie it down to the trailer. Then we'll go and show you the full cover completed on the boat.
We'd like to take this opportunity to thank our sponsors, the people from Glen Raven Mills Incorporated, who manufacture Sunbrella, Unitex Incorporated, a nationwide distributor, and W.L. Gore & Associates, using creative technologies worldwide in the making of Gore-Tex sewing thread. Join us again when we show you how to increase your profits and save time and effort with the Marine Canvas Training Institute programs.
Sherry, you know you've done a fantastic job, but you know what?
What?
I'm sick of working. Let's go fishing.
Okay, Don, let's finish.
Are you ready?
Hello, I'm Sherry Tunney with the Marine Canvas Training Institute. Today we'll demonstrate the making of a full cover. We'll show you how to lay out the patterns to avoid waste and how to cut and sew them together quickly. Our goal, as always, is to demonstrate how to increase your profits through the efficient use of materials and labor, while at the same time turning out quality marine products. Joining me today is Don Wedge, President of the Marine Canvas Training Institute. Hi, Don.
Hi, Sherry.
Although your students may master the skills that have made you renowned in the industry, how important is it that they have a good material to utilize?
Well, Sherry, using the skills we teach them, the materials that they use can make the difference of whether they're turning out a quality product that we can accept and that our customers have come to expect.
So where do you go to get this high quality material?
What we use is Sunbrella, which is manufactured by Glen Raven Mills, and Gore-Tex thread.
Okay, tell us a little bit about Sunbrella.
Sunbrella is manufactured by Glen Raven Mills. One of the reasons that we use it is that Sunbrella has got a 5-year guarantee on the material. And it also has a complete color line, which is acceptable to our customers to match the colors on their boats.
And Gore-Tex sewing thread?
Gore-Tex sewing thread we use for the simple reason it's the only thread that I know of that when you sew a marine product up with it is guaranteed for the life of that product, 100%.
Now, how do you get these materials to your shop?
Those two materials, along with some others we use, we buy from Unitex, which is one of our national suppliers. One of the reasons we use Unitex is because they're dedicated to fast service and competitive pricing.
So it's safe to say by utilizing a service such as Unitex and having high quality materials such as Sunbrella and the Gore-Tex sewing thread that your end product is really a top quality product, one that can withstand the harsh elements often encountered.
Sherry, you got that exactly right. Now let's get back to the shop and go to work.
All right.
Hello. Today we're going to show you how to make a full cover for a boat. People make a lot of mistakes making full covers because they get them measured wrong. So I'm going to show you a way of measuring that makes it real easy. Now, most boat covers will be made out of one of 3 different widths of material. If you're using Vivitex, as they do up north, it's 36 inches wide. If you use Sunbrella like we do down here, we use 46-inch goods, sometimes 60-inch goods. So those are the 3 basic widths that will be used to make boat covers. The reason I want to show you how to measure for a boat is we decided a long time ago that we would run all of our material widths across the boat. Reason being, that way we can control the shrink and the stretch that's involved in the material, and we have better control over it. The only problem with that is that when you're measuring for the amount of material that it takes to make the blank to cover this boat, you can make a lot of mistakes. And because I'm not too good at math and because I'm relatively lazy, I've come up with this inexpensive way of measuring this boat. Now, you can't make covers for boats unless you're a former water skier like I am. So I took an old ski rope, put a loop in the end of it, and I put 3 ribbons up in the front end of at the start of the rope. I have a red, white, and a blue, and that's only because I'm patriotic. Then I went up the rope, and at 35 inches, I put a white ribbon. At 45 inches, I put a red ribbon. At 59 inches, I put a blue ribbon. Now, the reason I put those ribbons at those segments, and they're done that way all down through the rope, is so that I can measure each width of material that it takes to get across this boat, and I can measure the longest side of that width. So get that into your head. I'm going to be measuring the longest side of that width because we're going to make a blank that's going to cover this whole boat from rub rail to rub rail. The next thing is, because I was born pretty lazy, but my wife insists that I work, I do it with this rope so that I don't have to walk the full length of the boat. So I can hold these 3 ribbons here, stand up at the bow of the boat, and I can throw it clear to the other end. Then I only have to walk down through one time. I can clamp it at the front and go to the back and clamp it down to measure it. Now, I don't even have to do that today because I got an assistant that's going to catch it and clamp it. And John Wayne never threw a rope like that to catch a cow, but that's the best I could do today. What we do here is take this rope and put this first set of ribbons up here at the bow of the boat, right at the rub rail. Put the rope down the center of the boat and clamp it at the back, as Becky has done. Now, we've decided that we're going to build this cover out of 46-inch acrylic. There's a red ribbon all the way down through this rope every 45 inches, and we have to know how many widths of material it takes and how long each width has to be. Now, the big problem in measuring for a blank is if you want to be wasteful, you make a great big rectangle. We don't like to do that. We like to have it fit a little bit closer than that because we can save a couple or 3 yards of material, and that's how you make money. So what I do is I look at this rope, I look at this first panel that goes towards the stern of the boat, I look at the red ribbon, I take my ruler, hold it on the rope and the red ribbon, form it down around the boat to the rub rail, just like the cover's going to lay. Look at the dimension, which in this case is 36 inches. Add a couple of inches to it and double it. And I'm going to tell Becky back there, who's writing for me, that the first width of material has got to be 76 inches long. All right, now here's where the mistakes can be made, because as you come up the boat, and also don't anybody make fun of my boat. This is the one my wife gave me for Christmas last year, and it's a little beat up. But it works great to teach people on, so don't anybody say anything bad about it. Back to what I was talking about, okay? The second width of material here. The longest dimension on that piece of material is from the center of the windshield, over the corner of the windshield, down to the rub rail. So I'm going to hold the ruler just the way the material is going to drape down to the rub rail. It's 54 inches. Add a couple is 56, and I can't even double that. It's 9 foot 4 inches, Becky. All right, now here's where the mistake gets made, okay? The longest side of these 2 panels is on the aft end of them. As we go over the windshield, the longest side of the next panel is not down here at the next ribbon. It's up here at this ribbon. So keep track of which panel it is you're measuring and measure the longest side of each panel. Then you'll never come up short and have all those little triangles showing down here at the rub rail. And I can hear you all laughing now because I know you all have done it. So the next panel is the third panel, which is this one, from this red ribbon to this one. The longest side is right here. So again, I got the same dimension again, okay? 9'4". What that is 54 plus 2 inches and double that. Comes up to 9'4", the way I went to school. The next panel is back here, from this ribbon to this ribbon back here. The longest side of that panel is on this side, this ribbon here. So we have 52 inches, which is 104 inches for the next panel. The last panel is this last red ribbon back here. And we're going to come up with 100 inches for that one. And here's where you can check. You could measure from this red ribbon to the rub rail and see if it was less than 46 inches or 23. If it was, you could cut that strip in half. I don't think we can get away with it. We can't. So the last panel has got to be a full width panel that length. Now we have to have one more thing in order to finish this cover. We have to have one more dimension in order to make the border. What you haven't even realized is by using this system of measuring for a cover, and I carry this rope in my truck all the time because when I go out to make an estimate on a boat, I get right up on the boat, I throw this down there, and when I make an estimate, I measure it so that I know exactly how much material it's going to take so that I can make an intelligent estimate. So now I have to know how much material it takes to make the border to go around this boat. We make our borders finish 6 inches. They start out cut at 9 inches. Consequently, we're going to get 5 widths of material out of a 46-inch piece of goods. But first I have to know how much border it's going to take. So I measure from the bow of the boat around the side, and I can usually reach 4 feet without straining too hard. And I just walk down through here counting the number of times that I come up with 4 feet. That's 2, 3, 4. So 5 times 4 is 20, and a couple of feet to get to the center. So that's 22 feet. We're going to double that. It means it takes 44 lineal feet of border to make this cover. And if you use this system of measuring for a boat, you could now go back to your truck, get onto your computer, and find out exactly how many yards of material it's going to take, how long it's going to take to make it, and give the customer an intelligent price. And you know that you're going to make money, and he's going to be happy. So this is the quickest way I can find to measure a boat cover.
We'd like to take this opportunity to thank our sponsors, the people from Glen Raven Mills Incorporated, who manufacture Sunbrella, Unitex Incorporated, a nationwide distributor, and W.L. Gore & Associates, using creative technologies worldwide in the making of Gore-Tex sewing thread. Join us again when we show you how to increase your profits and save time and effort with the Marine Canvas Training Institute programs.
Sherry, you know you've done a fantastic job, but you know what?
What?
I'm sick of working. Let's go fishing.
Okay, Don, let's fish.